Welcome, Slayer the Alchemist, and on today's episode, let's discuss Stryper. To hell with the devil. It's Easter weekend as of the recording of this video, and I thought, let's talk about Stryper. I haven't talked about them. This album came out in 1986. At the time, it really stood out from the crowd because of its Christian themes. At that time, it was during the Satanic Panic, and heavy metal was every parent's boogeyman, and heavy metal was evil and satanic and everything. And, it was in the crosshairs of parental rights groups, and religious groups would protest outside heavy metal concerts and everything. So Stryper really stood out for their lyrics, which were Christian-themed lyrics. My wife, Mrs. Alchemist, is actually a very big Stryper fan, or she was when she was a teenager. This is her record from when she was a teen, and I plan on having Mrs. Alchemist on the channel here. I was going to have her on for Valentine's Day, but she was sick. I was going to do a Meet My Metal Wife, and I still plan on doing that. So maybe when I have her on, I can have her talk about Stryper a little bit. It was also her first concert that she ever went to, and Stryper was famous for throwing out these small handheld Bibles, and she caught one, and I believe she still has it somewhere. And she even told me, right before I made the video, I was telling her I was going to do this, and she said that she remembers there being people protesting outside the Stryper show, and I was like, what? Why would the religious groups be protesting them? They're singing, about God and everything, but I guess they just hated heavy metal in general, and it just showed their hypocrisy. They didn't care. They were just against heavy metal. And both me and my wife, we went to Catholic school and everything, and I remember Stryper was kind of like, your parents or somebody was, oh, yeah, heavy metal is evil, and you say, what about Stryper? They sing about God and everything like that. So you can take that as you will, where your tolerance level for things like that might have affected how much you liked or disliked Stryper, or maybe it was just the music, because so sometimes when I do videos like this and I haven't listened to a band in ages, and especially if it was a band, I listened to this record a lot when I was younger. I liked it. I also liked the Yellow and Black Attack and Soldiers Under Command, and the things I liked about it back then was the vocals. There were a lot of vocal harmonies, and Michael Sweet had this really high-pitched, powerful high tenor voice. I've always liked Oz Fox, his guitar playing and his guitar sound. I like that sort of Boston guitar sound. Tom Scholz, very mid-rangey. Tom Scholz invented this thing called a Rockman, which was like a portable little guitar amp. And Oz Fox always kind of had that sound, very mid-range, pointed in the mid-range sound, very Boston. So I always liked him for that. I've always said on the channel here, I'm a fan of melodic music, melodies. I'm a sucker for big hooks and stuff like that, and they had a lot of that on their albums. But when you've been away from a record for a while and then you revisit it, sometimes your memories, I often think like, oh, this is going to be heavier than I remember it being. And that was kind of when I went into listening to this before I made the video. I'm probably going to be surprised by how much heavier this is than I remember it. But it was kind of the opposite. This is way more bubblegummy than my memory served. I mean, this is basically a heavy metal version of the 1910 Fruit Gum Company. That's not to say that it doesn't have its charms, and there aren't some kind of heavy moments on here. Like, for instance, the title track is kind of heavy. The drums are, I remember thinking I really liked the drums in Stryper. The drum sound, I should say, because I do think Michael's brother Robert is a good drummer. But man, are these drums loud on this record, and they're almost to the point of distraction. The snare drum is just like, it's so loud in the mix that I find it kind of distracting now. And the production really doesn't do this album any favors. It's produced by the band and Stefan Golfus. And not that sonically it doesn't sound good. Everything's balanced well. There aren't any frequencies jumping out at you per se. But it just kind of softens up the sound of the band. And I saw them live, I'm going to say it was like 15, 16 years ago. Not sure if they were touring for a new record or anything, because I've never really followed the band after this. But they sounded great live, man. The guitars sounded fantastic. I was surprised by how much great lead playing there was between Michael and Oz. I didn't realize how much leads Michael played. Again, I always thought Oz was a great guitar player. The vocals really impressed me. They really nailed the vocal harmonies. Oz sings. Oz has an amazing voice, lead vocal voice. He could easily be a lead vocalist if he wanted to. So between Oz and Michael, and they had a keyboard player who was singing background vocals, and I don't think it was Timothy Gaines in the band when I saw them. I think it was somebody else. He's listed on this record as playing, but reading Wikipedia now, I see that he really didn't, that it was somebody else who they list as additional bass, who was Brad Cobb. He's listed on the record as additional bass, but from, at least according to Wikipedia, he basically played on the whole thing. So when they kind of rock out, when they get heavy, like The Way, the last song on side one, it almost has like a Queensryche vibe to it. That's one of the only song written solely by Oz Fox. Actually, one of the only ones that Oz has a writing credit on. That one gets pretty metal and rocks out pretty hard. The last song, More Than a Man, that one's pretty heavy too. Rockin' the World, that one gets pretty heavy. But man, stuff like Calling on You, which was the big single for this, I remember really liking that as a kid, and listening to it now, it's just like, whoa, it is so like over the top with its, no pun intended, sweetness, saccharine sweetness to it, that it is a bit much. And when Michael sings in that kind of light voice, it's almost like his helium voice, like it's just a bit much. And the ballads on here are too much for me in this day and age, in my old age. Honestly, all of me, it's just way over the top in its sappiness with the keyboards. And the keyboard sounds don't help this either. They're very, very 80s light and tinkly sounding keyboards. Free, that was a single off of this. I don't remember it doing quite as well as Calling on You, but that one's okay. That one has a little bit of energy, a little bit of heaviness to it, a little bit of drive to it. So yeah, Stryper, they're this interesting band. Maybe hasn't aged as well as I thought it would. Listening to it now, but they're a band that they had their thing going, and in the 80s, when images and having something to make you stand out, whether it was the other extreme of somebody like Wasp with this sort of more aggressive, violent image, or it's Merciful Fate with their satanic image, or it's Stryper with their Christian image and the look and everything. They're famous for the Bumblebee, yellow and black look. And it seems like they were sincere about it, because through the years they seem to have stuck with it. And so I give them credit for that. And when you think of Christian metal, they're the leaders of that. And when I saw them, however many years ago, the place was packed, and it was people that were really into it. They kind of have their very dedicated, loyal following. And I remember being impressed in the crowd. There were parents there with their kids who were singing along to the songs. There were teenagers. There were a lot of people our age. So they seem to have a broad appeal to different people. And they've maintained a loyal following through the years. So I got to give them credit for that. And if you're not old enough, if you weren't a teenager, you didn't experience the 80s and the whole like backlash against metal is evil and all that kind of stuff, it may be kind of hard to understand how they fit into the whole thing and their place in the whole 80s ecosystem, if you will. You kind of, one of those things, you kind of had to be there. You kind of had to live it to understand, how they were kind of stood out. They were almost rebels in a way, it was kind of brave and adventurous for them to be doing what they were doing, because it certainly wasn't the popular thing to be doing their thing. And like I said, it seems like they were sincere about it, so good for them. But all right, let me know what you guys think of Stryper, To Hell with the Devil, or Stryper in general. Like I said, I will say these guys are great musicians. They pull this stuff off live. I would have liked, I should have researched, I don't know their entire catalog. It would be interesting if they were to play this album in its entirety live and recorded. I bet you it will come off a lot better, because like I said, when I saw them live, they were heavier. It just, the production sort of takes away, softens up their sound, if you will. I would like to see this done currently with them and giving it a little bit of a heavier take. I think the songs will come off a lot better. But let me know what you guys think of Stryper in the comments down below. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. Till we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.